Assalamu alaikum. This is Ahmed Dirir, and this is the first log of the series called How to Buy Farming Land in Somaliland. Okay, first of all, I'd like to start off by saying when you want to buy farming land, you must be really sure how much land you need to farm on. So you have to understand this will be dictated by the type of farming that you want to undertake. Today, traditionally, I mean, people like myself, how we started out, and other people similar, we bought, big pieces of, I mean, talking, a decade ago when I knew nothing about this. I mean, we bought big pieces of land, 50 hectares, 100 hectares, 200 hectares, and then realized later on that the finance to manage these pieces of land were just not possible, and we would never scale on this level as individuals, as the infrastructure and the capital cost for farming on any scale is heavy. Today, with modern farming practices, it's you can achieve a lot on a very little amount of land, and this is true all over the world in places where the population is much bigger than the land resource available. Places like India, if you take for example, they really are the kind of people who have pioneered high density farming. Traditionally, when people make fruit orchards, for example, like a guava or a mango orchard, and have traditional spacing between the trees of like 6-7 meters. This has been developed so much that now there are high density or even ultra high density fruit orchards where you can get 1,000 to 2,000 guava mango trees in just 1 hectare, 10,000 square meters. That is 100 meters by 100 meters. Secondly, you have to also realize that what the water resources that you have will also dictate how much how much land you can grow on. Even using drip irrigation and micro irrigation, even covered farming. I mean, you have to look at if you're using municipal water or you're buying water from a neighbor or another farmer, how much you're going to pay for that water per meter cube or per force or per barrel, is really going to dictate how much you can buy and how much you can farm on. Even if you drill your own bore well, the yield that you get from your bore well could be 10 cubic meters per hour, it could be 5 cubic meters per hour, it could be 20 or 30 cubic meters per hour. It really depends. Even, I mean, there are even places in Borome, in Gebile, in Botora, I know places where there are 60 to 90 cubic meters per hour. But so coming back to the size of the land, you have to really look at and analyze. You have to look at your business. You have to have a business plan, and you have to look at your business plan and see how much land you need. Is it an hectare? Are you going to be an urban farmer? Where you're going to just have an acre or half an acre, or or 1 acre, and do greenhouse farming, which is very successful also, depending on what you are growing, or if it's open field. So first of all, decide how much you need in terms of land, and then you must really scout around and research a lot about the particular area that you want to buy in. Don't just come over on a holiday, or and just casually ask everyone and every dilal who, or that is land agent, in Somali, and really don't let people take advantage of you and just give you crazy prices. You really have to be very astute. You have to be really very economical in the information you give to people, and you have to really do this so that prices are not inflated when you make inquiries. So do your research on the particular area. Have a casual walk around all over, and when you want to use a land agent, don't speak to numerous agents. Do a bit of research, and try to get the best of the bad bunch. I mean, land agents are they're cutthroat people, and you really have to look for a person that you can work with, and just work with that single person and establish ground rules in terms of, find out how much commission that they take. Don't just employ them or contract with them. Find out some offer a percentage basis. They'll say, we'll take 5% of the cost of the land. Others will say we'll take $1,000 or 500, but just don't leave. Don't just ignore that and not talk about that, and then later on it will become a problem when they ask you to hand over $2,000, and if nothing was said, then at the end of the day it's a very difficult situation. So establish the ground rules and how much you're going to pay per hectare, the value of the land, whatever. And then look for your land and make it, it has to fit your business plan. If you're going to drill a bore well and that's your intention, then you have to get a survey. You have to get a survey. You have to survey. The survey I'm talking about is a water survey. It's called a geophysical survey, where they use magnetic resistivity equipment to look at the layers of the ground and see whether if there are potential water-bearing layers, and whether they don't really, there's a good likelihood that the water will be fresh. But before you spend, a survey could cost you $2,000 to $3,000. But before you do that, you have to really look at the area and look at, are there other boreholes in the area? What is the quality of the water? Go along, have a taste. Look at the potential. Are there permanent? Are there dry rivers which flow? Because some flow more than others. If you are in a mountainous area, if you are in Hargeisa, the northern Murudiceh area, which is served by some dry rivers coming from the mountains, then there's the Humbawena Doh or the Da'al Buruk, or there are so many which flow more than others. Rather, and so there's a good potential for you to do something like a sand dam, and you could even get more water in future through a sand dam and a shallow well combination than a borehole. So look at your water resources, the potential for surface water catchment as well, if that's your aim. So do a good study, and once you're confident that this is the right place for you, then we look at the issues of the land and avoiding land dispute, which is notorious in this country. How you can avoid future disputes of land is not to buy things secretly. Once you know the place that you want to buy, that has to have clear demarcation through earth berms. You have to speak to the neighbors. You have to find out, how long this person who's selling the land to you has been living there. They have to have documentation for the land. And you want to know if that documentation is from the municipality, if it's from the Ministry of Agriculture. Some people have, you know, numerous even historic documentation from previous governments. So this is really key, and apart from the documentation, you have to really physically see and meet with the neighbors on the land, and they must, you know, they must be witness also. It's good if they are witness to the signing of the document, because that will avoid, you know, future disputes. Someone who was a witness to your purchase is not going to be able to have a dispute with you later on if he actually verified that the land that you're buying is the correct land, you know. So that is one advantage to it. Secondly, once you try to make the title deeds for the land with the Ministry of Agriculture, they're going to ask for two bordering neighbors to support your application, to endorse your application. So please don't do what a lot of people do, just come to the place secretly and just like it, and then go to a public notary and purchase it, and then later on, you know, all kinds of people pop out of the woodwork saying that, you know, oh, well, actually, you have encroached into our land or our border or whatever. So the issue has to, if there are no, so when I say don't do it secretly, if there are no clear demarcations of the land, then the people you are buying from must make some earth berms. So once they make some earth berms, you know, typically they will hire a tractor or a loader, and they'll make some earth berms. And as soon as those earth berms are made, if there are issues, they're going to come up. They're going to pop out of the woodwork. And don't, you know, take your time. Don't rush into buying things, because once those earth berms are made, the moss, we call in Somali, straight away, you know, don't buy the place. Just give it time, and a week or two, whatever. Let you know, anything that is going to come up. Continually go to the place and invest some time into this, because this is a big investment. And if you don't do it right, it can really give you a lot of heartache and a lot of headache, and it can waste a lot of your time. And time is more precious than money, because you cannot get time back. You can make money, but you cannot get time once you lose an hour. The seller of the land must be legally able to sell that land. So what I mean by this is, once you confirm ownership and title, there are other issues like inherited land. So this person selling, if it was an inherited land that belonged to their parents or family members, they may not be the sole owner. There may be brothers, sisters, siblings, there may be other members, you know, so you have to find out, because if one party sells to you, and then months or a year, whatever down the line, you know, someone else from the family pops up and says, well, actually, I didn't give consent and I knew nothing about this, then that could be an issue for you, a big issue for you. So you really want to do your research through the informal lines, and don't just go on what the Dirir tells you. You know, you have to have your own lines of research. You have to really ask around through the cultural lines, the traditional cultural leaders, the Saladin and the Adils. You know, you have to find out who are these people, and you have to be confident. So that doesn't happen. In terms of agreements, all agreements have to be publicly notarized. So you have to go to a public notary. Don't just go to someone's office, or, you know, you have to go to a public notary which is registered with the government. I think it's the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Justice. I don't know which one, but they have to have a license to be a licensed public notary. So don't just go to any one of them as well. Find out which is the appropriate public notary. You have to have two witnesses on your side, and they have to have two witnesses on their side. So the buyer and the seller each must have two witnesses. Never do this informally. Never do this by handshake or by just informal writing. There's something which is very, very important. I can't stress this enough. You need to have a payment. The seller must have a payment guarantor if they are not really financially viable. So if you have a seller who is not really financially viable and doesn't have a lot of money and assets, if you have an issue, and there can be issues. It's not something, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not trying to blow this out of proportion, but this is very, very, very common. And you have to plan that there can be issues, whether small or big. And if that land turns out to be taken from you, you need to be able to know that you're not going to lose your money. So there has to be a clause that the seller, if not able to repay any lost money or from the lost land, they must have a payment guarantor called a Damin Musallim in Somali. So this Damin, or the payment guarantor, equally has to be someone, you don't want them just to bring someone along and say, this is my guarantor. You, again, have to do your research. That person has to be solvent, he has to be financially viable, he she has to be someone that can, that has assets, houses, we're talking about houses and land that can be sold or seized, if the worst comes to the worst. So don't take that lightly. Don't just allow them to bring anyone, because really, at the end of the day, Somaliland, the legal system is very, very difficult. There are a few different things working together. It can be the Indian Penal Code, it can be the Somaliland law, it can be the Islamic Sharia, it can be the cultural and the cultural traditional customary law. There are so many things at work that even if you were to be given, even if you were to win a case against someone, it does not mean that you will automatically get what you are owed. So you have to ensure that you put clauses into your documentation that you sign to safeguard yourself. This is very, very important, because getting recourse here otherwise will be very, very difficult. Even around the world, someone, in the West, people declare bankruptcy, and how are you going to get your money? So equally, there are things here. So also make payments staggered. Don't just 1, 2, 3, bang. Put your money on the table. You have to take your time, do all your due diligence and your checks. Make sure your documentation is correct. You have your guarantors. Once they do the demarcation for the land, give that some time, a month, whatever. Let that, let any issues come out of the woodwork that are going to come up. If that land doesn't belong to that person, the things will go south very quickly. So you've bought the land, you've done all your documentation, you've made all your safeguards, all your payment guarantees, you've done everything. The land is now yours. You own the land. Congratulations. Now what you need to do is to continue and to put safeguards and the legalities, check all the boxes. You need to pay transfer tax. You need to go to the inland revenue, Ashura Beriga, and you need to pay Ashurti Kalawulichit. This is the transfer tax. It's paid on anything, which is whether it's a car or whether it's land. And you need to get your receipts for this. This will safeguard you. You are paying the tax which is owed to the government, but at the same time, you are increasing the legality of your land. You are safeguarding yourself. Then you need to go to the Ministry of Agriculture, and you need to do the title deeds for your land. Again, as I said, you will need two neighbors which are bordering the land. It could happen, but if people at the ministry may forget that aspect, you have to remind them, and this is because this is very important. You don't want just a rushed application. You need those two neighbors in there that will support and increase the legality of your standpoint, if anything in the future arises. Okay, so you've done all your purchases, you've done all your tax, and you've made all your title deeds. Now, you want to fly back to the UK or the US or wherever. What I would say is, while you are away, it's good not to just leave that land fallow, but what you need to do, to leave it empty. I'm using a farming term, but you don't need to just leave it as it is. Okay, what I would say is the best way is to first of all, what you need to do is put in some clear, good. If you can do fencing, that's wonderful. If you can do earth berms, whatever, you need to put clear boundaries on this land. If you can install water, wonderful. Get a family member to live there, to manage there, or even employ someone to stay there and to manage this place immediately. If you're going to be away for some time, if you put in some earthworks, some rainwater catchment, some berms, to ensure, especially if there's a steep slope on this land, and you don't want, you want to reduce the runoff, and this place will look much different the next time you come back, once you keep the nutrients and the water from running off of this land. Just, some earthworks costing maybe a few $1,000s, if you're away for a year and a couple of rains, hit that place, you'll come back and that place will look like a paradise, inshallah. So that is number one. So try to do some earthworks, boundaries on the land. If you can do some water and get someone to stay there, whether you pay them or not. The other thing is, however many boundaries your land has, there are always boundary disputes. I've noticed a lot in this country. Apart from, the bigger disputes is just someone coming along and saying, well, this is actually my land. But the smaller disputes, they're not small, but the most common disputes I found is actually the boundary, So if you have boundaries where no one's adjacent to you and you have, a road, immediately install a gate on each boundary, because if that boundary is not used and it becomes, someone decides to actually, encroach onto that land, and you'll come back after a year and you'll find that someone's actually put another berm right on top of your berm, and then later on there will be a dispute to say that, well, actually there's no road here. Immediately put gates onto the boundaries that you have, that people are not, adjacent to you, where there are roads. So dirt tracks I'm talking about, there might not be a track at all, but just on your documentation it says to the south there's a road, to the east there's a road, to the north, whatever. However many roads you have, dirt tracks, put gates in there. It doesn't have to be something expensive, wooden, something simple with, iron pipe, steel pipes. Just put simple gates to signify that this is, anyone that sees that, they're not gonna, if your neighbor sells their land tomorrow, and sells it to someone else, that person is not going to just come up and attach their property directly to your berm. They're going to see that gate and they're going to move off, So, and that will help in any future disputes as well, You know, there's a gate there, you saw the gate, why did you, you know, so this is how things work here. Yeah, so doesn't make, maybe it doesn't make 100% sense to you, but what is important is that you understand how things work here, and it will make life much easier for you. So that is really the ins and outs of buying land here and how to safeguard yourself in Somaliland. Thank you for watching. I hope you found that helpful, and this video is really geared towards Somali people in the diaspora who are not confident in doing this process. We've been away for a long time, maybe not sure. I know a lot of people sometimes contact family members to do this, and you know, family members, you know, who with good intention and, you know, goodwill, who want to help genuinely, but don't have experience in this area, can sometimes get involved in things which don't really work out and are detrimental to the buyer. What I would say is this is really an informative video, and I hope it helps you. If you need further advice and guidance, please contact me, not on the Facebook, which is sometimes difficult to answer, but just send me an email on this email on the screen, and I'll do my best, although I'm busy, to get back to you and help you, inshallah. So thank you for watching.